The 2022 NFL schedule is out. What are some of the biggest games, the toughest stretches for teams? Looking at strength of schedule, everything you need to know about the 2022 NFL schedule coming up right now.
You're listening to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show, your daily podcast on the National Football League, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson with you at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Get those questions in for our Tuesday live episode, Twitter Tuesday, or you can just jump into the chat with us on YouTube. We are on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel now, and it is a fun place to be if you want to see Matt and my's mug as we talk about the NFL here every single day. Thanks for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt, the schedule's out. It does get me excited for the NFL. I think they maybe make too big of a deal of it, but the NFL is so good at having all of these events, and then you start to die down a little from the draft, and then here comes the schedule release, and they make a huge show the last 3 hours about it. I don't know if you need 3 hours, but
Yeah.
It's awesome just to think of real football. It's like, okay, now we're back into the real world of picturing helmets colliding, right? An actual game happening rather than just what these teams look like on paper. But there's some on paperness to this as well of what schedules look like, whose schedule looks difficult going into the season. And then until we get to see these teams play on the field and know exactly what this new variety of all these squads are going to look like. But Matt, what is the first thing you look for when an NFL schedule comes out?
So here's what I did last night is, there was 4 of us Steeler analysts on live radio between 8 and 9 p.m. last night, analyzing the schedule as soon as it came out. And you would think that we would get a little leg up, maybe they'd give us a schedule at like 7:45 so we could study it and have some clue what we're talking about when we go live. We got it about 7:58. So we were scrambling a little bit, but we made it work. And, we could probably spend the whole first segment of this podcast talking about things to look for your favorite team as soon as you see the schedule. So, for example, one of the guys with me is a Steeler beat reporter, and he's looking at it going, boy, he's looking at his travel schedule. And it just so happens the Steelers happen to be the team that travels the fewest miles in the league this year. So he's like, man, I only have 2 flights. I'm flying to Carolina. I'm flying to Miami, but I can drive everywhere else. That's wonderful. Maybe I'll stay here an extra day to work, blah, blah, blah. There was an older gentleman on it's kind of a Steeler Pittsburgh legend. And he's looking at it like, man, I hate the night games because I just have I just don't function as well late at night as I do, 1 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and they have 5 night games. So he wasn't thrilled about that. So I think these are things your team should look for, and these are things I looked for immediately, and it'll apply to different teams differently, is first of all, weather. I think the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the year, you're at a major disadvantage playing in Miami, in Jacksonville, because you got to think, these guys, the starters in particular, do not play 60 minutes up in any game until week 1. So getting in, quote, football shape is always difficult to begin with, let alone doing it in Miami, like New England has to do to open the season this year. Like, that's a rough start. I also think that very much applies to Denver, that if you are traveling to Denver early in the year, you are at a massive advantage because the high air and the lack of oxygen. So I'm looking at Denver's schedule. They're on the road week 1, then they host Houston and your Niners. So you can make a lot of money betting on Denver early in the season. And they have an excellent record over 40 years, 50 years, whatever, those first couple games of the season. The same at home. The same is true for, if you got Buffalo on the schedule, I think you'd rather play them week 8 than week 18, or Green Bay or Chicago or, the cold weather teams, because you got to think the home team has an advantage there. A specific thing with Denver, as I mentioned, I also think you have to look at Cleveland and say, I think Deshaun Watson's going to get suspended. I know Cleveland's going to be on my schedule this year. I think we want to play them early rather than late. They open at Carolina, then they have the Jets, Steelers, Falcons. I have no idea how long Watson's going to be suspended, but I have a feeling he will be. I'd rather play Cleveland early than late. I certainly think you look at your bye weeks as well. I remember when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. They had the latest bye week in the league that year, and they were an older team, and they were a good team before the bye. They had a winning record. But then they took that week off, and I think everyone recharged, and Brady kind of took over, and they never lost again. So I think you want a middle to late bye week. And maybe as importantly, look at your schedule, but then look at the schedules of every team you play. Like, for example, I noticed that the Steelers, as everyone, has a bye week, and then they play their upcoming opponent after the bye, as everyone does. They host New Orleans. But there's two instances where the Steelers, and it'll be more true for other teams, play a team that is coming off their bye. So that my favorite team has one game where they're going to be a week rested more than their opponent, but they have two games where their opponents are going to have a week's worth of rest more than them. And that's also true for Thursday night. I mean, I think Thursday night on the road is brutal. I think you need to look at those things. How many, primetime games you have, where your short week's going to be. And of course, you look at it and just see the teams. Boy, we got the Rams, Bills, Chiefs, and, some other Packers in a row. That looks ugly, And then this year, more than ever, you got to look at the international games. I mean, there's games in London, Germany, and Mexico, and I haven't studied that, but I'm just looking at it now. Jacksonville plays in London against Denver in week 8, and they don't have a bye before or after. Like every other international game, at least that I'm looking at here, and I might be missing one, at least when you go across the pond, you have the next week off. Like, I can't believe that they don't have the week off after the London game. So that's a big disadvantage to me. They host the Vegas Raiders after going to London the week before. I wish I could bet on the Raiders right now. Whatever,
You know what, Matt? You can bet on the Raiders right now. With our friends at BetOnline, we're going to get
into do that on purpose.
Yeah, we're going to get into some other stuff here on the schedule as well. Who's got the road game stretch, the nice home game stretches. You strength the schedule a little bit here, maybe peek a little closer to week 1. Some of those international games, some of our favorite games on the schedule. But thanks to our partners at BetOnline, which continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. You can already bet on all of those lines. And we've got the opening lines for week 1 right now. Game 1 of however many games there are in a season. Thursday night, it is the Buffalo Bills at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams right now are favored by 1 point at BetOnline. And I think the biggest dogs on the week are actually the Bears at home hosting the 49ers are 6.5-point dogs. And it is the Houston Texans at home that are 8-point dogs. So those are the biggest dogs, and they're both home dogs in week 1. You know how we like those home dogs when we do our picks and bets. So maybe that's the way you want to go. But there's tons of NFL futures at BetOnline, NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball. There is boxing, UFC, Vegas casino games as well, live betting in game, esports, and a tons more at BetOnline, your continued source for everything sports wagering and information. So head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen. For your second listen, check out the rest that the Locked On NFL channel has to offer. And by the way, that's where you can find Peacock and Williamson. The Locked On NFL channel on YouTube is the new home of Peacock and Williamson. And you can still find us on all of your old podcast feeds as well at all the same places. But there's other folks like Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, Tony Wiggins, and the gang doing the Locked On NFL podcast. Your team is covered no matter the sport here on the network, and there is no off season for real fans, and that's why we do what we do every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So make sure you are also subscribed up and hanging out not only during the season but all off season long. Let's talk about some of these rough stretches, Matt, on the
Yeah, I
schedule.
think this is interesting.
Yeah, teams with, 3 straight road games and no buys in between. And there's 4 teams that really stand out there that have the toughest stretches, I think, as far as just no rest and 3 straight road games. And that is the Packers in week 7, 8, 9. That is the Chiefs in week 13, 14, and 15. The Miami Dolphins in 13 through 15. And we're talking about West Coast runs there for an East Coast team.
Ooh.
So that's a really tough one for, brand new head coach and brand new coaching staff there for the Miami Dolphins. And then the Philadelphia Eagles traveling
Ooh.
3 straight road games between weeks 15 and 16, late in the season there with some of those too. So you're not going to have any buys or anything to help you out after that stretch either.
Okay, so there's one thing I wanted to say last segment that I'm just going to throw out there as well. It's on my mind, just so people know this changes every other year. Last year, AFC had 9 home games and 6 road games. This year, it's the opposite. AFC has 9 road games and 8 home games. There's only 3 preseason games now, in case you don't know. But there's a big gap after the week 3 preseason game. There's a week off. So I'm assuming a lot of starters will play week 3. Okay, got that out of the way. I just want to make sure I said that. You mentioned that Miami stretch. So I have the schedule grid in front of me. Those 3 road games are week 13, 14, 15. They're at San Fran. That's a haul from Miami, of course. At the Chargers, at Buffalo. Ooh, that just makes my skin crawl.
I wonder if they'll try to at least stay over in California and
Maybe,
practice that
yeah.
week before the Chargers
teams are
game,
tough.
because that'd be crazy to go back 3,000 miles and come back again to play the Chargers in LA at week 14. But then that's the biggest trip you can make, is going from LA all the way to Buffalo. And it's a flight to get back down to Miami from Buffalo, even though you're on the East Coast again. So that's a really, really rough stretch of the season there. And it's going to be a fun game, actually, for the Dolphins and Mike McDaniel in week 13, going up against his old boss, right? Like
Absolutely.
The master and the apprentice. How much did Kyle Shanahan teach Mike McDaniel all those years? Does Kyle Shanahan still have some tricks up his sleeve that Mike McDaniel doesn't know, or was Mike McDaniel truly the mastermind behind it all of this time? So that's a fun little wrinkle in week 13 too.
So you mentioned there was 4 teams with 3 straight road games. As you were talking, I looked at all 4 of them, their stretch of those 3 games. None of them are nearly as bad as Miami, just in terms of opponent strength, like that. And I don't know about you, but if you knew you have 3 straight road games, I think I'd want that early in the season. Maybe that puts you behind the 8 ball schedule wise, but I don't want that late in the year when I'm weary, or, I have an aging quarterback, or, my stars are up in age and fighting 5 different injuries. And all these guys have it late. I mean, Packers are middle of the year, but Chiefs, Dolphins, Eagles have, 3 straight road games from week 13 on.
That is a brutal stretch. On the flip side, there are multiple teams with 3 straight home games. I mentioned the 49ers Dolphins there. The 49ers schedule should be more difficult than it is, because they're playing the 2 toughest divisions in the league, and they're playing in the NFC West and the AFC West. But when you look at their schedule, first of all, they have an extra home game because they're an NFC team, and one of their road games is in Mexico City, so it's a neutral site game against the Arizona Cardinals. That's a home game for the Cardinals. So they only have 7 true road games on the season. And that Mexico City's got a lot of 49ers fans. That's going to feel as much like a home game, as far as the fans that are going to be there rooting for the 49ers and the Cardinals in that game. So that is a really nice. They only have one stretch because of those 7 true road games where they have back-to-back road games. Not even back-to-back. They only have 1 back-to-back road game. Everything else, they're having either a bye in between, or they get to come back home in between all their road games. And that one stretch is the Panthers and the Falcons. So the second half of the back-to-back is the Falcons, which isn't a rough, team to be playing on the road. I don't think this year anyway. So the 49ers schedule could have been really bad, and I actually came away thinking that was actually a much easier schedule. And then we talked about the Niners because they have a stretch of 3 straight home games. Along with 6 other teams. So weeks 12 through 14, during that same stretch where the Dolphins come to town, they have 3 straight home games, do the 49ers. The Carolina Panthers have 3 straight home games between week 3 and 5. The Cowboys are home between week 12 and 14. The Lions are home between week 12 and 14 as well. The Minnesota Vikings have 3 straight home games from week 11 through week 13. The New York Giants are home early in the season for 3 in a row. They start on the road, then they come back home for 3 straight. So that's a nice little start to the season.
Yeah, might kickstart them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Buccaneers get a friendly schedule at the start of the year as well, with I think 4 out of 5 home games. They're at home between weeks 3 through 5.
Okay, interesting. I like seeing some of those stretches and tough things to deal with. I know we have some other numbers and other things to get to. I just want to throw one thing at you, just your opinion on it. Some of these teams that have new quarterbacks, new coaches, a lot of change. Would you rather play them in week 1 because you think they're scrambling and don't quite know what they're doing, but you don't have any tape on them? Like I always think about that, like, the Brady-led Patriots, the Ben-led Steelers. Like, I know what I'm getting, you know what I mean, year after year. But if it's a team with a new coach, a new quarterback, a new scheme, preparing all offseason for them is much more difficult. But that coach and quarterback might be way over their head too. You know what I mean? Would you rather get that team early or late?
Yeah, I think you'd still rather have them early, but maybe week 2 instead of week 1, just to have one game tape to view and see what they're up to. Because there is an element of a sneak attack that you don't know what's coming necessarily. Right, new regime, a new quarterback, and a new coach. And I talked about that with the 49ers and Bears in week 1. And the Niners are going to be big favorites on the road. So you get a home team, and you don't know really exactly what to prepare for with that home team with the Chicago Bears, even though their roster on paper doesn't look like they're going to be a very good team. But I'd still rather play at Chicago if you're the 49ers in week 1 than late in the year when the team has an opportunity to put things together and the weather's bad. So
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
but folks, these coaches starting today, your Niners are preparing for the Bears. The Bears are preparing for the Niners. Like, now that they know when they're playing, it's not like every practice between now and opening days and be geared towards week 1, but clearly that's the game you get the most time to prep for. So you're going to install a lot of stuff going forward, thinking about that opponent.
Speaking of new coaches too, the other part of being a new coach is not only implementing your scheme, but if you're someone like Mike McDaniel, who is like, this isn't necessarily accurate, but this is the way you think of Mike McDaniel is the super smart guy, went to an Ivy League school. He was the nerd in the basement, just putting together all of these fun schemes. And he had to worry about one thing. Now you're a head coach and you've got the entire organization to worry about, and so much less time to focus on just your scheme and just putting in new wrinkles every single week, and less time to watch tape of your opponents. And you've got to delegate all of that stuff. And Chicago and all these cities where there are new coaches, that's one of and first time coaches especially, they're going to find out how difficult it is time wise, especially during an NFL week, to get things ready. And they'll have tons of time to prepare for that first game, but then you start worrying about those coaches after week 1 with so much less time to prepare, and they're used to being able to focus on one small thing, and now they've got the whole organization to worry about in an NFL week.
That's a tremendous point, and that's kind of what I was going with that. With the rookie quarterbacks, I mean, there's probably at most one team with a rookie quarterback starting week 1. So this is an odd year in that way, where last year there was so many more. But Miami's a perfect situation with the head coach. It's not like I have all my X's and O's and I got to make sure my offensive staff is on par with, or on the same page with me, and my play calling and reading defenses. It's things like, when are we going to land? What's our travel? What's, I have all this media obligations I got to talk to. Your days get eaten up really quickly. What's our team meals? And then game day starts, of course, and you have to address the team and all those type of things. But more importantly is, boy, when do I call a timeout? Should I go on sides here? When do I go for it on 4th down? Where's the play clock in this stadium I've never been at before? Boy, it's loud in here. They're not very nice to me. It's a, you know what I mean? It's not Madden where you can hit pause and go, I'm going to kick a field goal or go for it. I'm going to go to the bathroom and get a beer and think it over. It's a bazillion people screaming at you as the clock's ticking down.
If I was an NFL head coach, I would for sure delegate that late game clock management stuff to somebody, to have them in my ear, to be like, okay, we're calling a timeout here. This many seconds on the clock. We're doing this. We're doing that. So you can focus on everything else, because that's really it's difficult, first of all, and you never can prepare for it exactly. And you need someone who's focused on just that can help you out, because we see teams make bad decisions there all the time.
Especially if you are a play caller. If you're, I think that's a big reason Andy Reid's had clock management issues over his years, because he's thinking about the next play. He's an offensive play caller or a defensive play caller. A lot of head coaches are just CEO types, and then they should be able to handle those things without any, problem. But I'm with you. I mean, I know this sounds radical and it's probably an exaggeration, but I mentioned Madden. Give me the 17-year-old kid that's been playing Madden since he could crawl, that is a clock management expert, you know what I mean? Or the MIT grad that is just so far advanced, but might not be a football expert, but just says the smart move here is to go for 2 or call a timeout. At least you listen to him,
Yep. Instead of just like, I feel like going for 2 here. I think we've got momentum.
My gut tells me, right.
And there should be a little gut, because you do have some, you have a leg up on the numbers, because you know how things are going. If your running back is hurt and you're not going to get that 1 yard.
Right. You're the best right guard in the league, and he's killing the defensive tackle. I should be able to get 1 yard, right.
All right. Next, let's talk a little bit more about some anomalies in the 2022 NFL schedule, prime time games, and some of our favorites to watch in 2022 coming up. But first, I'll let the folks out there know about Built Bar. How about this? Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing it was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. Well, that's what it's like to eat the new birthday cake puff flavor from Built Bar. And I've received the birthday cake puff, and it's pretty phenomenal. It's unbelievable how Built Bar is able to do this. I still love the peanut butter flavor. I just like the standard flavors the best, but these puffs are unreal that they can keep these low calorie and good for you when puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. No matter what flavor you like, you can find tons of great flavors at built.com. There's always some fun flavors, new ones coming all the time, like the birthday cake puff flavor. And most Built Bars are only 130 to 150 calories and 16, 17 grams of protein in every one. When you start to low sugar, low net carbs, that's the key, is the low sugar part. So it's the best of both worlds, because it actually tastes good, and it's actually something that is good for you. So it's something you're going to want to reach for. And if you don't enjoy your healthy snacks, you are not going to reach for them. You're going to reach for something bad. And when you compare a Built Bar to some candy bar you might grab that's twice as many calories, 300 plus calories with 30 grams of sugar, that is not something you want to be reaching for. So get rid of those old bad snacks and replace them with Built Bars. And most Built Bars are covered, by the way, in 100% real chocolate. That's part of you feeling really good about reaching for a Built Bar. So go to built.com, find whatever flavor you want, or get a mixed box, and use our promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right. How about this part of the schedule, which is the prime time games here, which are plentiful for a few teams and not so much for others. The Detroit Lions have 0. I think they're the only team that doesn't have a primetime game is the Detroit Lions.
They, of course, host one on Thanksgiving, though.
Yeah, I guess.
But that doesn't. I mean, it's a standalone game at least.
It's standalone. Everyone's watching you, but it's not prime time because it's the daytime. The New York Jets, Giants, Houston, Jacksonville, Carolina, and Atlanta only have one primetime game. Cleveland, Washington, Miami, Seattle, Minnesota have 2. The Bears, Saints, and Ravens have 3. The Titans, Colts, Raiders, and Cardinals have 4 primetime games. And the biggest group are the teams that have 5 primetime games. And these are clearly the teams that the league wants viewers to watch. And those teams with 5 primetime games are the Cincinnati Bengals, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Los Angeles Rams, Buffalo Bills, Philadelphia Eagles, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Green Bay Packers, Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers, New England Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos, and Kansas City Chiefs. So those are the prime timers. Is there any particular primetime game or just any regular game this year, Matt, that you saw on the schedule that you're circulating like, okay, this is going to be a game. This is why you have primetime, is for games like this?
Well, a note about primetime games is I think it's again, I'm going to bring back the Steelers because I analyzed this live. Like, they play Monday night at Indy, and that is week 12. They probably don't get home after a Monday night game, especially if it's a further road trip than Indy to Pittsburgh, which isn't super far, till like 3 or 4 in the morning, is when you actually get in your home bed. Like, a Monday night road trip, when you think about post-game press conferences, showers, get on the bus, get on a plane, fly, get on a bus, go to the facility, get in your car, drive to your house, walk in your front door, crawl into your bed, sometimes can be 5 in the morning. And then you have a game the next week. Like, again, I was just looking at the Steelers schedule, and everybody should look at their own teams. The easiest game on the Steelers schedule to me is the Falcons, but it's at Atlanta the week after a road Monday night game. So that's really going to be a tough game. So I kind of, is that a gimme at Atlanta? Probably not. So kind of where I'm going with this is, I think there's an NFL rule with the schedule that the most primetime games they can give you is 5. But there is some flex stuff at the end of the year where I think they can bump you to 6. But like, I look at the Bengals, for example, as a team that just isn't used to this. Frankly, the Steelers, the Bucks, the Packers, Dallas, because they're so popular, New England, KC, those teams are used to that type of brutal schedule, where a team like Cincinnati that kind of has newfound success, that's hard to deal with as a coaching staff, as a player group. I mean, if 5 of your 17 games are late night, that you're not getting in your bed, especially if it's a road game, till very late, that's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And that's where the primetime games, because travel sometimes helps.
And you hope you don't have a plane delay or a frozen wing or whatever the heck happened.
Travel is usually better for the teams in the East, and especially the Central, than the teams on the West Coast. But that's where the teams on the West Coast win, is the primetime games, just because it's earlier for you. So your body clock for an East Coast game, the game's ending at midnight, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, 100%. So I do think that's a challenge. Cincinnati's the obvious one of teams that haven't had a lot of success lately, but now are expected to do big things. It's just harder than you think, and a lot of fans don't look at it that way.
I do want to talk about the teams that have the easiest and hardest schedules really quick before I forget. According to Warren Sharp, and the way Warren Sharp usually does it is he looks at the Vegas win totals and the Vegas odds. So it's not his opinion. He's using Vegas.
Right. I think that's the best way to do it.
Which is a really good way to do it. And looking at those win totals from Vegas is how he decides, based on who you're playing, who has the easiest schedule with projected win-loss with their opponents. And the team that has the easiest strength of schedule using that formula is actually the New York Giants this year. And the team with the most difficult schedule based on opponent projected win-loss is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. So it's noteworthy. I mean, I think those things matter. Of course, everything changes. I mean, and people look at these schedules now and be like, that's a win, that's a loss. Well, if Mahomes doesn't play that week, it might be different. You gotta have some luck on your side as well. But without question, I think that's the best way to look at strength of schedule. Looking at it, growing up, everyone talked about, last year's winning percentage of your opponents. Well, the Broncos didn't have Russell Wilson last year. Like, they're harder to play against now than they were then. Vegas knows more than last year's win percentage.
Some of my favorite games on the schedule, Matt, I love the first game, that Thursday night.
Yeah.
Bills and Rams. You got the Super Bowl champion Rams and the Buffalo Bills. The way the Buffalo Bills season ended, and they're mad, but just seeing the way that team was humming at the end of last year, you never carry that into another season. But man, it's the first game of the season, first of all, so you're extra psyched about it. But it's a really good game too. The Bills at the Rams, Thursday night football to kick off the season. I can't wait for that one and for the season to start. I get really excited looking at the schedule and just really focusing in on some of those games.
I always think, boy, chalk up a loss to the opening day road team. Like going into the opponents, like back when New England was a powerhouse, like going there and they're giving rings away, and it's like no team's going to win that in that environment. But I love this Bills-Rams matchup in that it's only a 1-point spread, and I think most of us think probably Buffalo's the slightly better team. I don't know that they're walking into the same buzzsaw that a lot of teams have in the past. And I got a couple other schedule nuggets here if we have time too. I just want to throw out there.
Yeah, we do have some time.
Okay. Couple things here. How about the Cowboys opening the season? Tampa, Cincy, and then they go to play the Rams. Like 0-3 is hard to overcome. I'm not saying they're definitely going to be 0-3, but the Cowboys look like a team on paper that is worse now than they were last year. Tampa, Cincy, Rams. Yuck. I don't like that at all for Dallas.
Yeah, that is pretty bad.
Here's another one. You mentioned your Niners kind of steal a quote home game or, don't have a road game to talk about. Well, your division rival Rams are the same way. As mentioned, the NFC only has 8 road games, but one of the Rams road games is quote at the Chargers. So they really only have 7. You know what I mean? Like that is not a road game at all.
No, that's a great point. Yeah. That's a zero travel game too. Not only
right.
is it your home stadium, is zero travel and at worst neutral.
And then I want to throw out a little bit of the holiday activity. As mentioned, the Lions host the early Thanksgiving game. The Buffalo's at Detroit, Giants at Cowboys, and then Thanksgiving ends with Patriots at Vikings. And really all my wife cares about with the scheduling is how it interferes with our holidays. Well, Christmas is not great for that aspect. Yeah, Nicole was not thrilled with, the Steelers playing Monday night or Christmas Eve, as are most teams. There is a Monday night game that weekend, but every team but 2 is either playing on Christmas, and that's Green Bay at Miami, Denver at the Rams, Tampa at Arizona, or more likely on Christmas Eve. So, ho, 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 there's going to be a lot of football on while you're opening presents.
How about one more game that I noticed looking at the schedule for the 49ers is a New Year's Day game in Las Vegas. No matter the team.
What could go wrong?
I mean, yeah, think about that. The night before is New Year's Eve. You've got a New Year's Day game at Las Vegas. Anytime that's going to happen, yeah, you've got to have a strong locker room and some kind of curfew put together for that one. That has the potential to be very interesting.
Which brings me to my last point that I meant to say right at the beginning is, of course, so many fans are anxiously awaiting this because destinations, like how much fun would it be to go to that game in Vegas? People are probably booking tickets left and right to go see their team on the road New Year's Eve in Vegas. Like, you think you could have a good time as a fan spending a couple nights there and catching the game?
That's probably the game because the 49ers travel really well. It's a close trip. That's probably the first game that will sell out on the NFL schedule this year is New Year's.
Right.
New Year's in Las Vegas.
Exactly. That makes a ton of sense, so all these things, long weekends, things like that. Of course, I know a ton of Steeler fans, they travel extremely well, and Packers and tons of fans just anxiously await this day because their vacation plans depend on it.
Absolutely. That is the 2022 NFL schedule. Let us know in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. What is your favorite game this year on the upcoming schedule? What road trip are you going to make to watch your favorite team? And make sure you're all subscribed up to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel. Make sure you're checking out the rest of what the network has to offer, including Matt Williamson's Locked On Dynasty Football podcast. You got to talk about some rookie dynasty rankings, by the way, Matt.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Maybe we'll either do it next week or once we finish our draft series. But I look at them hourly, and I'm tweaking them all the time.
Okay. I can't wait to see where that lands when we do that show, probably next week after we finish up our AFC draft grades. We've got 2 more divisions left on that. We will continue that on Monday. Then we'll have our Twitter Tuesday, our live Tuesday episode on YouTube, and get into the chat a little bit about everything going on in the NFL. And then we'll finish up with the last division of our draft grades Wednesday. Then maybe Thursday we'll hit those rookie dynasty rankings, which will be a lot of fun. So keep tuning in. We'll be with you every day. Back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.